There's a photo that was making its way around the internet this morning that showed the shooter from the Butler rally in Pennsylvania potentially walking around the site before the shooting with the rifle in his hand. But today I'm going to tell you everything is not always as it seems and shed a little bit of light on what actually is going on here. I think you'll be interested to see this. And of course, another thing that I want to talk about is some of the preliminary findings of Congressman Clay Higgins, because there's some interesting things to point out there as well. And the further we go down, the more we find out to try to get to exactly what happened here. I'd love to hear your opinion too of this photo or some of the findings from Congressman Clay Higgins. Leave your opinion, no matter what it is, after the video. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. Let's go and get into it. Now here's the photo in question, right? Now taken as a still, it does look like Crooks is holding some kind of a rifle here. It appears that you can make out the stock. It looks like it definitely extends beyond where his arm actually is. So, you know, highlighting maybe the barrel of the gun. And honestly, at first glance, you're like, dude, okay, obviously this was a setup, because there's no way that Secret Service did not see this guy walking around with this gun. We already know that he was seen by local ESU units in Butler County 90 minutes prior. You know, we know that he was a person of suspicion. We know about the rangefinder, right? What else can come out that proves Secret Service must have been setting this up? Well, the problem is, and one of the things I'm fortunate that was shown in this picture, is you see the guy in the red shirt in the front of the picture. He's got the sunglasses on. Well, this is a part of a video that was released, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago, that actually shows Crooks walking around the building on the outside of where the actual rally is happening. And when you watch the video, the full video, you see that he clearly does not have the rifle at this point in time. It's only when you take the still that it looks like a potential rifle there. So I saw a lot of comments underneath the photo, you know, confirming that, you know, what people's suspicion are, and that, you know, this thing was obviously an inside job and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not trying to necessarily put down anybody's opinion. What reason do we really have to trust anybody involved with this, including the FBI, Secret Service investigations? We've seen them, you know, withhold information and just straight up lie to us. So I understand why people feel like that. But I also think that you need to kind of take a step back when proof is shown that, you know, things aren't always as they seem. And when you play the video, you can tell that clearly he's not carrying the rifle, at least not at this moment in time. Now, the theory still is that he either hid the rifle behind an AC unit. I think a lot more people are leaning towards the fact that he probably had the rifle broken down in the backpack. Right now, with a traditional AR, you have an upper, you have a lower. So breaking the two down with captive pins, putting it back together, takes a matter of seconds if you know what you're doing. So there's that as well. I think that's probably the most likely explanation, one of the two. At the end of the day, he either hid it beforehand or he broke it down and it was in the backpack, right? This would clearly scream inside job if he's just walking around with the rifle at that point. You know, let's assume that it is an inside job, right? They wouldn't let him just walk around with the rifle beforehand. They would say, hey, you got to be a little bit more tactical than that. So either way, this particular photo is not what it seems. Now let's talk about one or two of the things that Congressman Higgins found. I'm going to dedicate a video that you're going to see in the next day or two to a couple of more things that I think you're going to find very, very interesting actually once you read the report. But I'll cover that in a future video. A couple of things I want to cover here. We know that 8 rounds were recovered from the rooftop, okay? Now we were wondering, you know, why he couldn't get more shots off. Well, that may have been answered because the 9th shot actually came from a local Butler SWAT team operator. Higgins described this guy as a total badass because he left his post, he ran to a position where he could get a shot off on it. Now, interestingly, that shot actually hit the stock of Crooks's rifle. Now, most of these stocks are made of plastic, but the important thing to note is a couple things here. It actually fragmented plastic from the stock itself. So that did a couple of things. That peppered basically his Crooks's neck, his face, all the way up. It stunned him for a minute, and that actually checks out with some of the eyewitnesses. They reported that for a period there, Crooks looked disoriented. And then that's when he went to go take position again, but no more rounds were fired until the counter sniper actually was the one that took him out. Now, Higgins wasn't able to examine the rifle. The FBI claims that they have the rifle and proper evidence, also the 8 casings. But one thing that Higgins pointed out that I think was actually a really good point is that a lot of the times on these ARs, and that DPMS rifle is no different, you have what is called a buffer spring in the back of the gun. And this is what cycles the firearm. Without it, there's no way for the gun to cycle. Now, of course, there are piston-driven guns that do not require you to have a buffer spring in the stock, but this rifle, this DPMS rifle, was not a piston gun. It was a direct impingement, which again requires that buffer spring after that shot is taken. Essentially, that buffer spring brings the bolt back into position, which picks up another round, which then would allow him to fire another round. But he's thinking that that buffer spring was actually destroyed when the shot hit his stock, which prevented him from firing any more rounds at all. Now, I had made the point in a video just a couple of days ago that this guy was a hero because he probably prevented more people from dying in the crowd. And it looks like he really was, man. He could have probably easily got off at least 10 more shots. So much respect to that guy that left his post, to that operator that left his post and took that shot. Now, generally speaking, Higgins said that all of the local law enforcement that worked with him were 100% forthcoming. They shared stories with him. They let him take his time and investigate some not only just some of the major headlines that, you know, legacy media covers, but also some of the more fringe ideas as well that are going to be especially interesting when I cover that in this upcoming video. But one more thing I wanted to point out is that the FBI actually cleaned up the crime scene and opened the crime scene back up after just 3 days. Now, we know that they cleaned the roof, but why would they clean it up that quickly was Higgins's question. And essentially, that's going to keep anybody else from being able to get any of the biological evidence that was there. You can only recreate so much now because you don't have that evidence to go off of. And just after 3 days, they did that. Also, Higgins wanted to verify the autopsy reports to forensic evidence as well and make sure everything that lined up there. Now, Higgins also wanted to actually look at Thomas Crooks' body and make sure that the forensics and the autopsy report matched up, but he was unable to do that. He found out on August 5th that Crooks' body had already been released so he could be cremated. Now, the coroner corroborated that, hey, I would have never released that body without the permission of the FBI. It's going to raise some questions about what they are actually hiding or keeping away from the public. But I do trust that Congressman Higgins will be able to maybe hopefully get some answers here, but it's hard. You can look at the report and you can look at the evidence that was taken from the autopsy and all that and match up the two, but without actually seeing the body like he states in his preliminary findings, it's going to be hard for him to actually say 100% what happened, which just feeds into more conspiracies. Like, why are they cleaning up the crime scene so quickly, and why would they not get another set of eyes on Crooks's body while they're doing the autopsy? You know, whether 10 days pass, I think, is from the time the shooting happened to the time he was released to be cremated. If that's a normal time period, fine. But make sure that you get people in there to look at it to, corroborate everybody's story here and just make sure that we're all being 100% with everybody else involved. That just seems like the right thing to do. But this just leads to more distrust inside of the FBI. Now, again, things are not always as they seem. Just like with that picture that I showed you in the beginning, all the way to how the FBI is handling this case, there really is even more questions. But some things that we can actually answer in the next video are going to be wild. So make sure, if you like what I do, consider subscribing and hit your notifications so you never miss a video from me. Let me know what you think about some of the things that we talked about in this video as well down in the comment section. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one, and as always, hold them down.